Okay. It's absolutely freezing. So, so I was talking to someone recently, um, who was actually, I would probably say, the person that I first connected with, who was, let's say, on the path um, or had some direct insight, and it was um, a guy I used to train with actually, um, who gave me a book called Zen Beginner's Mind, and that was one of the first books um, that I read that kind of triggered something, um, or there was a recognition in there somewhere. And there was a good point, he made a good point in that, of course, this has a tendency to become heady or conceptualized, that when that's our main mode of understanding and relating to our experience, it's quite automatic that it will kind of, it's kind of like to me it felt like a pull back and up type thing. Like that center point of the head that pulled back, a reconfiguring of something in experience or into a context or into something that me in here is relating to as a separate experience, as an objective thing somehow separate from what I am. And he made a good point, and I can definitely relate to that, it's important to, I guess you could call it like a physical grounding. It's important to balance that out, I suppose, with something which is immediately sensory, something which is immediately physical or animalistic or visceral. Did I say that already? So for us it was physical exercise, sport, martial arts maybe, some sort of physical expression or discipline, or hobby, where the main focus of that is flowing with physicality, or engaging or allowing the senses to express directly. So as I've explained before, I think this is why I gravitated so much towards movement, physical exercise and sport, because there were a number of experiences of flow and simplicity in that, where the whole relative story of the one in the centre of this that's doing it for whatever reason was in a moment forgotten about, and it was replaced with what is already here anyway. And when that's relaxed, and what's already here anyway is non-dual by nature, then it wasn't apparent that the totality of experience was timeless and non-dual, that even the thoughts were timeless, locationless and non-dual, but it was contextualized into a form of seeking, and that form of seeking was to look for more and more of those non-dual experiences, because of the inherent peace that was there in those moments in experience. Yeah, and they made another good point in that in this day and age, with the technology that we have, social media, education and so on, especially when the channels like this, who talk about non-dual awakening and so on, especially when they're so easily accessible, without I guess you could call it a practice, without something where we're engaging directly with immediate physical reality in a real and authentic way. Without that, it's really easily conceptualized, really easily turns into a philosophical, thought-based approach. So this is kind of exactly what I'm describing when I say that the initial opening in this was there was an unreal, heady element. I guess you could equate that to give a model as the I am, or the self-aware consciousness, or the self-aware knowingness aspect that seemed distinct to the space of thought, the space of conscious self-aware thinking. Let's see, as a sense, had a kind of ephemeral, unreal quality to it. Like it had a positional, contextual quality to it. Whereas when that, so like in that non-dualities, for me, was framed subtly in a subtle concept, a subtle context, or a subtle identity, a position of viewpoint, and that kind of assumed the unreal quality of, I don't know if unreal is a good word, but the dreamy kind of not here, slightly not here quality of the thought space. Whereas when the same realization clarified past the limits, past the boundaries of separate senses, into what was here, which is an immediate, you could call it physical, sensory experience, it became more real. That's why when I talk about, deeper, more simple, and immediate backward stages of insight, of realization, of awakening, that it started for me to have a more real, I guess you could, I don't know, real isn't the right word really, but it's just to illustrate like a quality in comparison to the heady space of consciousness, or awareness. Yeah, it had a more visceral and immediate and primary feeling to it in comparison to the floaty and ephemeral and dreamlike quality of, or the subtly not this, the subtly not here quality of the I am. So with that, there's less of a fixation on a view and more of a releasing into just what's here. I mean, that includes the direct experience or the direct thought or just thought. But there's a kind of a loss of distinction of that thought space as something that is distinct from this. So I guess you could call that the ground of being or the background, or like the video I made talking about anatta, the eternal witness doesn't exist. Something here separate from the seen, the heard, the thought, the sensed, or any suggestion that there is a distinction between any of those senses as perceived by something here. So I guess my point on this one is direct experience. And for myself, there had to be some degree of deepening of realization before what direct experience is and what surrender is actually means. Because when that view is occupied with the reality, all there really is that view as the primary level of experience, that view being something like existence or something like the I am. Where there doesn't have to be a view here with realness. There doesn't have to be a context, a meaning. There doesn't have to be, and there isn't, actually anything here, actually something here in this, or something there that it's relating to. So non-duality remains somewhat conceptual, remains somewhat grand, and like it had dimension, it had value, until it became immediate in the sensory aspect. There was like an overarching substance or overarching thing, or sorry, yeah, what was I talking about? Sorry. Yeah, that sense of subtle duality, subtle something elseness, or subtle somewhere elseness. It's like a very, maybe the most basic sense of separateness, sense of separation from immediate sensate experience, or the sense of there being something here anywhere as a distinct experiencer. It seems to be like the baseline quality of awareness, that there is something aware, that there is something somehow distinct or behind here. For me, it was like it was centralized, but it projected itself out as a ground of being, as a substratum, I've heard it called, as a nothingness, as a formless somehow awareness behind everything, or like, but really it was here. It was hiding itself because it couldn't hide itself inside the assumed localized point of the me here, it projected that thought out into everything, into a kind of singular mind, and hid itself behind manifestation. Either behind here or behind here, or who knows. It's not clear, but when that's forgotten about, or that's kind of seen not to be there, it clarifies that it's not there. That, like, of course, the nothingness isn't actually there, isn't actually separate from this. Like, the void isn't somewhere else. The emptiness isn't somewhere else. There's nothing that's not this, nothing that's not here. And it's quite can be quite a painful realization, because in that we're letting go of a form of hope, or a form of comfortable disassociation, that there is something else, there is something other than what is. And of course there isn't. It seemed to be there was a lot of kind of emotional stuff there that was providing, like, it was kind of like a performance in time, with a context, a narrative, and a meaning. And that performance, in a way, was strangely nostalgic. And there was, I can't even describe the array of emotions that were strung together in that, as somehow personal in a transcendent way. But it's a powerful thing to let that go. Of course, there's nothing lets it go. What I'm talking about just happens to become clear. But with that, like, a fundamental illusion is dispelled, and it's not something that you can want in the way that the mind thinks, or the self thinks it does. Which is why I think it's helpful to get lost in the sense, get lost in the enjoyment and the profound aliveness, the profound beauty, the paradox, the marvellousness of the sense, because that's all that's here. And it's when this is direct, it's not like it's more than enough. It's a miracle. It's a miracle, and you just get lost in that miracle. You get, and it's impossible to comprehend or understand as something other than, as something here other than what is. Anyway, I'm being summoned, so I must go, and I'll talk to you next time.